It was supposed to be a fresh start. After years of grueling contract work across the country, I'd finally come home. Well, close enough. The town of Fairgrove wasn't my birthplace, but it felt right. Quiet cul-de-sacs, scenic views, a small lake nearby, and just far enough outside the city that people kept to themselves. Or so I thought. The moving truck pulled up just after sunrise. I stood in front of the house, my house, arms crossed and beaming. The place was a charming two-story colonial revival, tucked into a leafy corner of Rose Willow Estates, an upscale HOA neighborhood with matching mailboxes, manicured lawns, and a reputation for community values. I'd bought it in full cash after landing a lucrative government security consulting contract. No mortgage, no liens. It was mine. "Sir, where do you want the dining set?" one of the movers asked, motioning toward the heavy walnut table I'd inherited from my grandmother. "Back of the living room, just by the windows." They nodded and got to work. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Cool air, silence, and that new paint smell greeted me. I had gone for soft gray walls, black fixtures, and matte finished oak floors, sleek but homey. Within 20 minutes, the driveway was a maze of boxes, furniture, and hand trucks. I was elbow-deep in a stack of server cases when I heard it, the unmistakable click-click-click of angry heels on concrete. "Excuse me," came a shrill voice behind me. I turned slowly. A woman in her mid-50s, blonde bob cut stiff with hairspray, glared at me like I'd just kicked her golden retriever. She wore a pressed white blouse, slacks that screamed HOA-approved modesty, and a lanyard around her neck. Hanging from it was a plastic badge that read, "Neighborhood Compliance Chair, Rose Willow HOA." She didn't even introduce herself before pointing a trembling finger at the movers. "What are you doing here? Who gave you permission to move things into this house?" I blinked. Me. I own the house." She narrowed her eyes. "Impossible. The Wilsons moved out last month. This property hasn't been reassigned. You people can't just waltz in and—" I cut her off. "I bought this property directly, closed on it last week. I have the deed and paperwork." She scoffed. "Highly unlikely. I oversee all property transitions in this neighborhood." "Well, apparently someone forgot to CC me," I said with a tight smile. "Now, if you'll excuse me." "Don't get smart with me," she snapped. "This neighborhood has rules, and I will not let some stranger squat here." Before I could respond, she whipped out her phone. I stared in disbelief as she dialed. "Yes, I'd like to report a theft in progress. A group of men is unloading stolen furniture into an empty house on Maplebrook Lane." I stepped forward. "Ma'am, please hang up. You're making a serious mistake." She turned her back to me and hissed into the phone. "He's trying to intimidate me now." "Yes, I'm sure he's not the owner." 5 minutes later, a patrol car cruised up the street. The officer, Officer Langston, got out, eyes flicking between me and the woman, who was now standing triumphantly like she'd just solved a major crime. "This is him," she said, "caught in the act." Langston approached me cautiously. "Sir, can I see some ID and proof of ownership, please?" I handed him my license and a copy of the title paperwork, which I had luckily stashed in a folder on the front porch bench. He took a few minutes verifying it on his radio. "Well," he finally said, walking back to Karen, "everything checks out. Mr. Daniels here owns the property." Her face drained of color. "That can't be. Are you sure? I mean, he doesn't look like he belongs here." Langston's expression hardened. "Ma'am, unless you have further evidence of a crime, I suggest you let the man move into his home in peace." She sputtered, but I could see the defeat creeping in. As the officer left, she turned to me and hissed, "This isn't over." You'll regret moving in here. I gave her a slow smile. I doubt that, but you might. I turned back toward the house, but I knew deep down this wasn't going to be the last time I dealt with Karen. This was war.
The next morning, I stepped outside to grab coffee from my truck when I noticed a neon orange paper slapped across my front door. Notice of non-compliance. Unapproved move-in. I tore it off and read it again. It was from the Rose Willow Estates HOA, with Karen's signature at the bottom in thick black ink. The woman wasn't wasting any time. I called the HOA office and asked to speak with someone besides Compliance Chair Karen. A younger-sounding woman named Denise answered. She filed a notice already? Denise sounded hesitant. We normally don't issue those until after a hearing. Well, she did, I said, and I'm not even violating anything. Let me look at your file, I heard her typing. Ah, your paperwork is in order. The sale was recorded properly last Friday. So the notice is invalid? She paused. Unofficially, yes. Officially, you'll need to request a review at the next board meeting. Thanks, I sighed. When's that? Next Monday. That gave Karen a full week to cause chaos. Sure enough, she took full advantage. That afternoon, a landscaping company rolled up and began mowing my lawn. Hey, I shouted, what are you doing? A wiry man in a vest waved. HOA orders. Said the house was abandoned, so we're restoring it to code. It's not abandoned. I live here. He looked confused, but stopped immediately when I showed him the deed. That night, I found a letter shoved through my mail slot. Your porch light is not HOA approved. Please replace with standard fixture, model number RWE-LX104, or face daily fines. Model number? Really? I hadn't even unpacked fully, and Karen was already trying to fine me for things I hadn't agreed to. My purchase agreement clearly stated the HOA couldn't impose retroactive fines without written warning and grace period. The next day, I visited City Hall and requested public zoning records and HOA legal filings. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd play chess. Turns out, the HOA's charter had expired 6 months ago. Their ability to enforce any fines was technically suspended pending reauthorization. But Karen had been acting like it was still in full force, possibly issuing illegal fines to the entire block. I grinned. This wasn't just personal now, it was actionable. I spent the next 2 days installing smart cameras on the front, side, and back of the house. If Karen so much as sneezed on my mailbox, I'd catch it in 4K. And then came the final straw. Saturday morning, I was assembling a new grill on the back deck when I heard someone enter my garage. I ran around the side and found Karen inside, holding her phone up like she was filming. What the hell are you doing in my garage? I have the right to inspect suspicious property as the compliance officer. You broke in. The garage door was open. Because I was carrying tools in and out. She turned to leave. I'll be documenting this for the next board meeting. No, I said. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I had her on camera trespassing, and I was done playing nice. That night, I emailed my attorney friend Brian, who worked in real estate law. I sent him everything, The invalid notices, the video footage, the trespassing incident. "This isn't just harassment," he replied. "This is abuse of authority. Let me handle it." Finally, I felt like I had some backup. But as I lay in bed, scrolling through my footage, I noticed something chilling. At 3:12 a.m., someone had walked past my house. A woman in a bathrobe. Karen. And she was carrying something that looked suspiciously like wire cutters. The next morning, my security cameras were dead. The real war had just begun. By Sunday morning, my home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a battleground. I checked the power line running to my camera hub, snipped clean. The exterior cable had been cut precisely, and someone even went as far as unscrewing the security screws. The audacity was almost impressive. Luckily, I had a backup power bank and internal storage on my primary doorbell camera. I pulled up the footage. There she was, Karen, at 3:12 a.m., wearing gardening gloves and a smug expression, looking right into the lens before the feed went dark. I forwarded the clip to Brian. "This is criminal," he texted within minutes. "Vandalism, trespassing, targeted harassment. We could build a case." But I didn't want to just press charges. I wanted to expose her. So I started documenting everything. Every HOA letter. Every neighbor she harassed. Every time she stepped onto my property. Speaking of neighbors, a few began trickling over once they realized I wasn't going to roll over like everyone else apparently had. First was Mr. Kincaid, a retired Navy engineer 2 doors down. "She did the same thing to the Martinezes," he told me, "ran them out within 6 months, claimed their mailbox was 2 inches too tall." Did they sue? They tried. HOA board backed her. Most of the board are her friends, or scared of her. I nodded. Not anymore. That evening I invited Kincaid and another neighbor, Sheila, a single mom Karen had fined for her son's basketball hoop, to a small backyard cookout. Over burgers, I shared the footage of Karen in my garage and her 3 a.m. sabotage job. "You need to show this at the next board meeting," Sheila said. "People are tired of her, but no one's had the guts." "Oh," I said with a grin, "I plan to do more than that." By Monday, I'd built a small dossier. Brian had drafted a formal cease and desist notice citing 4 legal violations. But I didn't send it yet, not until the HOA board meeting. Monday evening arrived, and I walked into the Rose Willow Estates clubhouse, a red-bricked building with white columns and enough American flags to make a politician blush. Karen was already seated at the head of the long conference table, surrounded by 5 other board members who looked like they'd all just left a retirement gala. She didn't acknowledge me. "Mr. Daniels," the secretary began, "you requested time to address the board." I stood, pulled out a flash drive, and handed it to the projector tech. "My name is Cole Daniels. I own 1125 Maplebrook Lane. Since moving in, I've been harassed, trespassed against, and falsely reported to the police, all by your compliance chair." Karen's nostrils flared. "That's slander." "Actually," I replied, "it's video evidence." I pointed to the screen as the clip of Karen entering my garage played. Then came the 3:12 a.m. footage. Gasps filled the room. A few board members leaned forward. One whispered, "Is that wire cutters?" Karen tried to speak, That doesn't prove anything. I was checking. You cut my security line. That's vandalism. This is a misunderstanding, she blurted. Let's not be dramatic. I turned to the board. Per HOA bylaws, any board member who engages in criminal activity while serving can be removed by majority vote, pending review. The room went silent. I move to suspend Karen pending legal review, I said, voice calm but firm. To my surprise, Sheila, who had just joined as a non-voting member, stood up from the gallery. Seconded. One by one, the hands of the board went up. 5 votes. Karen stood, knocking over her chair. You'll regret this, all of you. She stormed out. The president turned to me. Mr. Daniels, we'd like you to temporarily oversee compliance until a new election can be held. I smiled. Gladly. As I left the clubhouse that night, a sense of calm washed over me. But that calm wouldn't last long. Karen wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot.
The next few days were suspiciously quiet. No letters, no landscaping crews, no phantom fines. Even the HOA mailbox, usually stuffed with compliance memos, sat undisturbed. That was the first sign. Karen wasn't the kind to go quietly. Her storm always followed the silence. By Wednesday, the whispers began. Neighbors who'd voted for her suspension were finding trash dumped on their lawns. Others received anonymous letters in the mail claiming they were being watched for violations. I got one, too. You don't belong here. The neighborhood sees everything. Cute. But petty intimidation was only Karen's warm-up act. That evening, I came home from a grocery run to find 2 county inspectors on my porch, clipboards in hand. Afternoon, one said. We're here to perform a surprise inspection. We've received reports of unpermitted renovations. I blinked. Unpermitted what? Garage modifications, electrical installations, deck extension. She's good, I muttered. Excuse me? Nothing. Come on in. They walked through the house, checking the electrical panel, my basement workbench, the back deck. 10 minutes later, they found nothing out of compliance. Your paperwork's clean, the inspector said. Whoever reported you, well, it was worth checking, but it's clear this was just a nuisance complaint. I thanked them and watched them leave. I knew Karen had filed it. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. That night, I logged into my home network server to check on the camera system and found it disabled. Not offline, wiped. Logs erased, cloud backups corrupted. All my footage gone. She'd found a way to hack into my system or had someone do it for her. That crossed a line. I called Brian. She's escalating. I want to file charges. I'll prep the paperwork, he said. We'll hit her with a formal restraining order and file for damages. But that wasn't enough. Karen needed to be exposed publicly. The next morning, I began building a website, www.rosewillowtruth.com. Simple, clean, with sections for abuse of power, fake fines, surveillance footage, and victim stories. I began uploading Karen's letters, scanned copies of notices, and statements from neighbors she'd bullied over the years. Within 24 hours, the site had over 3,000 hits, most from inside the HOA. And then the messages poured in. She fined me $500 for planting tulips. She threatened to evict us over a trampoline. She told my kids they couldn't skateboard on the sidewalk. I posted it all. The site became a pressure valve for the neighborhood's collective frustration. And then the media came. A local investigative journalist contacted me. We've been tracking HOA abuse stories. Yours is gold. Would you be willing to speak on camera? I thought about it for maybe half a second. Yes. 2 days later, the segment aired. HOA chair accused of harassment, trespassing, and targeting homeowners in Rose Willow Estates. Karen's face appeared on every screen in town. Her reputation, once spotless, was now dripping in scandal. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse for her, she showed up at my door. At midnight. Banging. I opened it, phone in hand, camera recording. "You ruined my life," she screamed. "Do you know who I am? I built this neighborhood." "You poisoned it," I said, "and now people see the truth." She stepped forward. I raised the phone. One more step and I call the cops. She hesitated, trembling. "You'll regret this, I swear." "Good night, Karen." I closed the door and locked it. The next morning I filed the restraining order. The police, already aware of her pattern, served her that afternoon. Karen was officially banned from setting foot on my property, and the HOA announced an emergency election. But I knew better than to celebrate. Karen had been humiliated, which meant she had nothing left to lose. I spent the next few days preparing for the inevitable. Karen had been stripped of her title, exposed in the media, hit with a restraining order, and publicly disgraced. But people like her don't go down easy. They crawl into the shadows, collect resentment like firewood, and wait for the right spark. So I decided to find the matches before she lit them. I started with public records, property deeds, tax liens, court filings. I dug into every HOA financial statement I could get my hands on. And what I found wasn't just petty harassment or power hunger. It was fraud. Karen had been fining homeowners for years under the pretense of community standards. But much of that money never made it into the HOA's official budget. Tens of thousands of dollars were unaccounted for. Even worse, some of the contractors she hired, like the landscaping crew that showed up at my place, had no legitimate licenses. Many were small-time companies registered under shell names, including one under her nephew's address. She wasn't just harassing people, she was profiting from it. I compiled everything: scans, screenshots, bank transfers, contractor filings, and handed it over to Brian. He whistled low. "This goes way beyond HOA abuse. We're talking embezzlement, misuse of funds, possibly even racketeering if the state AG gets involved." I nodded. "And we need to act fast. She's going to realize I'm on her trail." "Then let's beat her to the punch." That Friday, Brian filed a report with the county prosecutor and the office of the inspector general. Simultaneously, I published a new page on rosewillowtruth.com. Where did the money go? It included everything: excerpts from bank statements, contractor licenses, HOA meeting minutes, and anonymous whistleblower testimony. Within hours, the site exploded. Local papers picked up the story. Online forums lit up. Residents began calling emergency HOA meetings, demanding accountability. Karen, for her part, vanished. She stopped showing up to the gym. Her porch lights stayed off. Her mailbox overflowed. Until the subpoenas arrived. It was Sunday morning when I saw them, 2 men in suits standing on her porch. She opened the door only halfway before they handed her the thick envelope and left without a word. By that evening, neighbors were gathering in clusters on the sidewalks, buzzing with rumors. That guy exposed the whole scam. Karen might go to jail. She told me she owned the HOA. Turns out, she just ran it like a cartel. That night, I received an anonymous message through the site. "She's planning something. She knows she's cornered. Be careful." I didn't know who sent it, but I believed it. That's when I noticed something strange in my email inbox. A message from my bank. "Unusual account activity detected." I opened it. Someone had attempted to reset my online banking password twice. Another alert, login attempt on my insurance portal. Then another, from my old workplace's secure intranet. Karen had gone digital. I disconnected my home server immediately and began purging systems. She must have had someone helping her. This was too coordinated for a suburban gossip queen. I activated my off-site backup, updated every password I owned, and installed two-factor authentication on everything. Then I called Brian again. "She's trying to hack me." "She's panicking," he said. "Cornered animals bite." I hung up and stared at my front door. Karen might have lost her title. She might lose her freedom, but not before trying to take me down with her. And I had a feeling the final confrontation was coming soon.
I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak in the house made me sit upright. Every flicker of motion on the outdoor cameras sent my phone buzzing. Karen had turned from a nuisance into a saboteur. And I wasn't just dealing with her anymore. I was dealing with someone who knew how to get into bank accounts, insurance portals, maybe even government systems. That meant she either had serious connections or she'd hired someone dangerous. The next morning, I visited the county clerk's office. I needed to know if there were any pending actions involving my property. Sure enough, there was a red-flagged notice filed just 2 days ago. It was a petition to void my property deed on the basis of fraudulent transfer. Filed by Karen Albridge, citing an obscure clause in the HOA's original land use charter. She was claiming I had acquired the property illegally. I couldn't believe it. "She's saying you can't own the home because the HOA never approved the transition," the clerk explained, reading the form. "But the HOA doesn't even have deed authority," I argued. "She's citing something from 1989. It's outdated and probably invalid, but it'll require a court hearing just to dismiss." It was a stall tactic. She was trying to tie me up in legal hell. If she couldn't win, she'd drown me in red tape. I left the clerk's office fuming, but on the drive home, I got a call from Sheila. "Cole, you need to get back to your house. Something's happening." I floored it. When I turned the corner onto Maplebrook Lane, I slammed the brakes. 2 tow trucks were in my driveway, loading my truck and my motorcycle. Karen stood at the edge of my lawn with a clipboard, talking to the drivers. I jumped out of the car. "Hey, get away from my stuff!" Karen turned smug as ever. "You parked in violation of neighborhood codes. No motor vehicles in the driveway for more than 24 hours. I live here. You don't legally own this house. I filed an injunction. Until that's resolved, the property is in dispute." The drivers looked at me confused. "She doesn't have the authority," I shouted. "This is illegal seizure of private property." They hesitated. "We were told this was HOA authorized." I shoved my phone at them. "Call the police, or I will." The older driver stepped away and made the call himself. 5 minutes later, a squad car rolled up. Officer Langston again. He stepped out slowly, like he'd seen this coming. "Sir," he said to me, "what's going on?" "She's trying to have my vehicles towed off my property." Langston looked at Karen. "You're under a restraining order. You shouldn't be here." Karen tried to speak, but he cut her off. "Step off the property now!" He turned to the tow drivers. "If you touch another thing on this man's land, I'll write you both up for criminal trespass and vehicle theft." They dropped the winch cables and backed off. Karen stood frozen, lips twitching. Langston approached her. "You're in violation of a court order. That's an arrestable offense." "You wouldn't dare." "I would. And I am." He reached for his cuffs. Karen's eyes went wide. "No, you can't. I'll sue." "You've already sued half this block. Let's give the court system a break." She screamed as he cuffed her, a high, keening wail that echoed down the street. Neighbors came out, phones raised, videos rolling. As she was led to the car, she turned to me, eyes full of venom. "This isn't over." I stepped forward and smiled. "Yes, Karen, it really is." That night, RosewillowTruth.com saw its highest traffic ever, and I finally felt safe enough to sleep. But one mystery remained. How did Karen get access to my digital systems? I checked my router logs again, and that's when I found it. A guest login, authorized 3 weeks ago from inside my house, which meant someone helped her. From inside. The discovery gnawed at me. A guest login inside my own system, authorized 3 weeks earlier before Karen had even escalated the attacks. That meant this wasn't just Karen acting alone. She had an accomplice, someone who had access to my house before I fully moved in. I pulled up the logs. The access was granted at 3:14 p.m. on a Wednesday, the same day I'd had work done by the telecom technician to install my high-speed fiber line. "Jeremy," I muttered. The guy had seemed polite, clean-cut, mid-20s, talked a lot about cybersecurity, ironically. I dialed the provider. "Yes, Jeremy Pruitt was the installer assigned to your location on that date." "Does he still work for you?" A pause. "Actually, he was let go 2 weeks ago. We can't discuss the details." That was all I needed to hear. I called Brian. "We found the leak. Karen had help, an installer who gave her backdoor access to my network. That could push her charges into conspiracy territory," he said, "if you can link them." I already had a plan. I went back to the footage Karen hadn't destroyed. The earlier clips still saved locally on one of my disconnected drives. I scanned through camera angles from the day of the installation and found what I was looking for: Jeremy, standing at my network box. Karen, walking her dog 2 houses away, just happening to stop and chat with him for almost 10 minutes. Coincidence? Not likely. I shared the evidence with the DA's office. Within 24 hours, a warrant was issued for Jeremy's arrest on multiple counts of unauthorized access, conspiracy to commit cyber intrusion, and aiding a known offender under restraining order. And just like that, the final piece snapped into place. The news broke the next morning. Local HOA chairwoman and former technician charged in cyber harassment fraud scheme. Authorities allege the two worked together to surveil and harass new homeowner Cole Daniels, while also misappropriating HOA funds and attempting to falsely seize property. But even as the town reeled from the revelations, I knew this war wasn't truly over until the community was safe from more Karens like her. I used the momentum to rally residents. We formed a new HOA committee, transparent, democratically elected, and accountable. We rewrote the charter, killed all predatory clauses, ended the abuse of fines and anonymous complaints. We renamed the position of compliance chair to community relations liaison and gave it no enforcement power. That role went to Sheila, and for the first time in years, people smiled at HOA meetings instead of groaning. Kincaid became our new treasurer, and I politely declined any leadership title, but I remained the watchdog. The new board also agreed unanimously to ban Karen from any future participation in HOA matters permanently. And with the criminal case progressing, her days of weaponizing paperwork and personal grudges were behind her. But there was still one final thing I had to do. I printed a copy of the very first fake notice Karen had ever taped to my door. Unapproved move-in. You don't belong here. I framed it and hung it right above the fireplace, a permanent reminder that I didn't just belong here, I helped fix what was broken. 6 months passed. The leaves had turned gold in Rose Willow Estates. Families were walking their dogs without fear of citations. Kids played basketball in driveways without HOA violations being thrown at them. For the first time in years, the community felt like a neighborhood, not a courtroom. Karen? She pled guilty to a reduced set of charges. Her attorney managed to avoid jail time, but she was slapped with over $60,000 in fines, 5 years of probation, and a lifetime ban from holding any position in an HOA or community board. The civil suits, mine and several others, were still ongoing, but her reputation and wallet were already in ruin. Jeremy, her accomplice, faced felony charges. His case was still pending, but the evidence was stacked high. The DA had even offered him a deal to testify against Karen in exchange for a lighter sentence. He took it. Poetic, really. Karen's own spy turning against her. Meanwhile, the new HOA flourished. Sheila and Kincaid led with openness and integrity. The neighborhood saw its first community fair in over a decade. Food trucks, music, booths with crafts and games. People showed up in droves. And I finally felt settled. Until one morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a crisp envelope marked CONFIDENTIAL. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. You think you've won, but the game is never really over. I made you what you are. Without me, you'd just be another man in another house. No signature, but I didn't need one. I stared at it, silent. She was right about one thing. I had changed. Before Karen, I'd been a loner, moved from city to city, no roots, no community. But after fighting for this neighborhood, defending my property, and helping reform something broken, I'd become something more. A leader, a neighbor, a protector. So I placed the letter next to the first HOA notice, the one I had framed, and under it I added a brass plate that read, "Built by Resistance." Later that evening, as I watched the sun dip behind the trees from my porch swing, Sheila stopped by. "You okay?" she asked, holding a slice of homemade pie. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally am." She sat beside me. "It's funny, A few months ago, none of us even knew your name. Now everyone says you saved this place." I smiled. "I didn't save it. I just reminded it what it could be." Down the street, a father taught his son how to ride a bike. Laughter rang through the air. Porch lights blinked on, not uniform, but warm and welcoming. No one was measuring mailbox heights. No one was spying on their neighbors. And I finally knew I belonged. Not because I fought for a place here, but because I earned it.